Magic. Emotional resiliency is magic. There's a magic of it and to it. When you really understand it, it works like magic. And it's such a gift. We want to have emotional resiliency because it gives us a better experience of life. We have less fights with the people that we care about, less conflict. We are not hurting as much. And we can bounce back from those huge life challenges. Because life does give us challenges. Sid Banks said that something like life is a contact sport. And you're gonna get bumps, you're gonna get bruised. So can you bounce back? That is the magic of emotional resiliency. And in this video, I'm gonna share with you 2 ways that your emotions are working that throw you off kilter. And then I'll share with you one of my best secrets for emotional resiliency. Because I think people can live their entire lives in this lower state of emotion, and it's not a very enjoyable experience for them, and it's not a very enjoyable experience for other people around them. It's not very pleasant, and it's not who they really are. My name is Rich Life. It really is. It's legally Rich Life. And I am a chiropractor for the soul. So what I do is I help people have adjustments, but have one thought. It's all it takes is one thought that realigns you with who you really are. It up levels your level of consciousness. And this is the Rich Life Realization Podcast. I'm your host, and we'll be talking about what gives us the most rich experience of life possible. Because we have this amazing life in front of us, but we can block it. We might be missing out on amazing, wonderful experiences that we're blocking ourselves from not realizing. Today, we're going to be talking about emotional resiliency, the magic of it. And it's not like stoicism, like the Stoics of the old. I thought one of the answers of how to do this was to be in a Stoic. And of course, it's a very different understanding. It's a perspective shift. But it's not like not feeling emotions. That's not what this is about. That's not what emotional resiliency is about. It's not being that like, I am not feeling, I am okay. Rich is fine. It's not this robotic experience because we're human. You're human. You're gonna have an emotional experience of life. But it is being able to recover more quickly. That's really what mental health is. Mental health isn't never getting upset. Even people who are enlightened will still have that human experience, a human reaction of getting upset. So it's not that, but it is being able to recover more quickly, to recenter, to let yourself come back to who you really are, your full natural expression. That is more of what it is. That's true mental health. And it's easier than we think it is. It is kind of like magic that we sometimes get in this illusion of we don't know. We don't know what our emotions are telling us. We get lost in them. And I know I was in that space before. Sometimes still, every once in a while. But of course it doesn't last as long. I'll tell you a story and then I'll share that secret of the two different ways that your emotions and thoughts are leading you into different directions. So when I was a kid, I loved magic. I was all about doing the different tricks, and I loved going to, there was a store in a town called Estes. I don't think it's there anymore. I went, it kind of breaks my childhood little heart. And it was a magic store, and I would go every time we went to Estes. I had to go there, had to go to the magic store. I'd get some magic little trick deck or a magic like wand or something like that. There was a whole kit that you could get, and I'd practice, and I still have one of the magic decks, and I'll still use it with kids. And it's pretty cool. It's a great trick. There's something about magic that it's just this unknown of, oh, it's an amazement. And there is a magical quality to life when we live it from a place of that wellness, that connection, that richness. There's a place of wonder and curiosity. But the thing is, we don't have to force it into that. And that's what I thought that we had to do. We had to force it and bring ourselves into alignment. But there's something else that does it even better. So, and this is kind of how I see emotions now. This has helped me so much. May it help you. So, thought creates emotion. And when I say that, most people are like, well, yeah, of course. They'll agree with me. Thought creates emotion. But I mean it a little bit more than that. I have a depth of meaning to that a lot of people are not getting. I don't just mean sometimes. I don't just mean like a certain percentage of thoughts create emotions or your emotions are coming from thought. I mean all of your experience of emotion is coming from thought. 100%. And that some people seem to have a hard time with. There's a part of them that realizes that there's a connection between thoughts and emotions, but they're like, not 100%, Rich. Give it just a little bit more of a percent. See what happens. That understanding will set you free. That understanding is magic in the way that I loved it when I was a kid. And you can trust then. But because a lot of people think that the next step is, okay, I got you, Rich. So thought creates emotion. I got that. I'll just control all my thoughts. Well, good freaking luck. Good luck. I tried to do it. I've used meditation, I used affirmation. Your thought system is always bubbling up, isn't it? It's not something that you can wrestle with because it's not like an actual person or an actual thing. It is who you are. It is coming from that space within. So you're really just kind of wrestling with yourself. You're fighting yourself. You're not going to get very far. You can try. In fact, sometimes I tell people try to fight with your thoughts and see where it goes. See how far you get. Because you might be able to do it for a little bit. But when you have those challenging times, the thoughts just come. They're not coming from you. And yes, you can control and specifically have a specific thought of, I am awesome, or those are like the affirmations. You can make yourself have thoughts. But that's just kind of like adding to the noise. And it brings you away from your true wellness when you do that. So I definitely recommend, don't do it. Try it if you want to, but probably won't get you anywhere. It's like a dog chasing its own tail. You'll do it for as long as you want, and you're not going to get it. But when you understand the thought emotion system, that is going to be your first nugget here. That is going to be powerful. And this is really, really helpful. So when you have a thought, you have an emotion. Thoughts are quicker, emotions are slower, but emotions are still pretty fast. Like thoughts can, they're here, they're gone. Emotions a little bit slower. Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor said that emotions take 90 seconds to arise and drift away from your body, to dissipate. And you're like, hold on. No, just a second. I've had emotions that have lasted for days, maybe even months. Can't just be 90 seconds. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous, Rich. You get out of here. So there's something else going on, isn't there? Because if that's true, and that is true, your emotions will come and leave in a minute and a half. That's all it takes. Now you have an experience of having a longer emotions for two reasons. Reason number one is that emotion triggers another thought. It creates this cycle of thoughts and emotions where a thought triggers an emotion, you have that emotional response in your body, and then another thought comes and you've created a cycle. The way that you know that you're doing this is that it gets worse. Your emotion gets worse over time, and your thoughts get worse over time. That's how you know you're in that cycle. And that's okay. We do it so innocently. We don't mean to. Number two, the second way that you have an emotion that lasts longer, and this one's a little bit different, it feels different, is that you're actually holding on to the thought. And this one is where the feeling is just kind of flat. It's not up and down. It's not a roller coaster. When you're in the cycle, it's a roller coaster. But for this one, it's kind of flat. I think a lot of people who experience like depression are doing this without realizing it. And the funny thing, the interesting thing is that you can feel the emotion. The emotions tend to be a little bit more clear, especially when you're holding on to it. You just feel the emotion. You don't have the thought. The thought is kind of like a background noise. It's not really there, and you might not be aware of it. You might not realize that you're holding on to it. And it might just feel like the emotion is kind of coming out of nowhere. But that's what's happening. You're holding on to that thought. And it's harder to identify the thought. Now, that's the other difference. If you're in that cycle space where the thought triggers the emotion triggers a thought, it gets worse, it goes down, it goes up. Oh, you can tell what the thoughts are there, typically. You're like, those are the times when, oh man, I am so hard on myself. I am beating myself up. I am hurting myself with the power of my own thought. You're doing the same thing when you're holding on to a thought. And eventually, you let go. It doesn't feel good to hold on to a thought. Really doesn't. So eventually you let go, and you might, at the end of letting go, be able to look back and have clarity on your thought. That's what happened to me actually last probably 2 weekends ago. I was in my emotion, but I didn't know what it was telling me. And I was okay with that. I knew that eventually I would come out of it, that I would realize that I was holding and I would drop it, and then I would be able to look back, and I was able to look back. And I said, oh, it was because, and this is what had happened, is I wanted to keep doing my work, but I'm getting ready for a baby. And so there's tons of projects. And so I was feeling a little bit, I was holding on to a resentful thought and feeling that resentment innocently. I didn't want to feel that way or have that. And I didn't even realize it at the time, but I did after. And when you're having the cycles, oh, you're probably fighting with somebody or yourself. That's when fights happen, is when one person's in that cycle and then another person kind of gets invited into that cycle, and then they just kind of feed on each other. They're each having their own experience. So it's their experience of this emotion is only coming from their thought, but it's being triggered by other people. That's when fights happen. So if you know that, if you know the difference between these two, you can identify it. You can notice it. And that is the real magic. Because when you really notice You know, not from your intellectual mind, but from a deeper part of you that, oh man, I'm holding on to this, you just automatically let go. Or when you really realize that, oh man, I am in this cycle, you slow down, you break the cycle. Just naturally, you're not forcing it to break. Don't force it. But you'll just naturally break away from it. Because you noticed, oh, I'm really hurting myself and it doesn't feel good. That is the true magic. Notice and understand. And then it's clear. And it's okay to be in that space where it's not clear. You don't have to lose your brains trying to figure out, how can I make this clear? It's kind of like a snow globe where you're shaking it up and you're like, how can I make this more clear? You're using the same power of thought to shake it up by trying to fix it. But when you let it settle, it settles and you can see. So sometimes you just need to let it settle. That is my secret to emotional resiliency, is to, number one, understand which one of these you're doing. Are you holding on, or are you in this spinning cycle? And then the second one is to notice what's going on. And if you can't notice, then let it settle. And then noticing will happen. And then you'll eventually come out on the other side of it, hopefully more quickly, hopefully without making any major decisions or saying anything that would really hurt someone else. We don't mean to. And then we see it from another way. We have that argument, and then the day later we're like, I can't believe I said that. Why did I say that? You judge yourself for saying it and you feel guilty, but then you see it clearly and you're like, you can have that conversation, you can apologize. And hopefully this understanding helps you to not even have to say anything. You can be like, hey, I'm in my cycle right now. Or hey, I think I'm probably holding on to something that's hurting, and so I'm hurting. And I don't know exactly what it is, but I'll be okay. That's magic. That is magic. This has been the Rich Life Realization Podcast, where we explore the richest life possible. And if you got a lot out of this session, this podcast episode, I would have a request for you. I always ask this because I want to help as many people as I can with these understandings. And if this impacted you, please share it with somebody that you really care about, with somebody that tends to hold or tends to get lost in the cycle, or both. Because then we can all have a more rich experience of life. And may you have a more rich and magical experience of life today.